Hello Acolytes, welcome to part 2 of my Funguary series. We're going to be discussing days 5 through 11. So our first quote-unquote species is the hairy Mycena. This was incredibly difficult to find any information about, so it's possible that some of the information I'm going to give you or my conclusions about it are incorrect. To my understanding and through my research, hairy Mycena isn't a fungus, like it isn't a species of Mycena, but it's a reference to a molding process that some fungi go through. The most common mold I saw coming up in reference to hairy Mycena was the bonnet mold. It's a parasite. It's also referred to as a pin mold, and you could probably see why it has these sort of dots on top of the growth to make it look like it's a pin stabbed into a pin cushion. It grows as a pale brownish yellow hyphae on the caps of larger mushrooms, and these specialized hyphae are called sporangiophores. This is how the mold reproduces. After the hyphae grow through the exterior of the mushroom, the spores are passively dispersed to new locations via wind, water, and insects. So it does have a similar process to reproduction as a traditional mushroom, but from what I can tell, this is more of a parasitic mold than a Mycena. Because this mold seems pretty aggressive, I wanted to make the character relatively aggressive, and also because of the hyphae coming out of the top of these mushroom caps, I thought that the hairstyle that would suit them well is a mohawk, so I really leaned into this alt-punk aesthetic. It was genuinely so fun to do her hair. I love the colors, I love the texture of her hair. As soon as I drew this mohawk, I immediately wanted to draw a million other characters that had a mohawk. I just love the way that it turned out, and I do think it captures the idea of this hyphae growing out of the cap of the mushroom. For her hair, I also wanted to represent with the color the sort of brown tips, as well as the whiter, almost iridescent color of the sporangiophores. All of the colors for this illustration and all of the colors for all of the funguaries that I've done have been color picked directly from the mushroom images that I'm using. If I had one regret with this piece, I really like that the mushrooms that you see in my reference photos have some transparency in their stem. I think it would be really cool to create a character with some transparency. And spoiler alert for next week, there is a mushroom called the ghost mushroom, so hopefully I'll be able to do some transparency there. I think alt fashion is very interesting, it's very intricate, and that makes it pretty challenging, but I think I managed to come out with something that looks pretty alt. I think my favorite part of this outfit are those giant platform shoes that she has. I think those would be so fun, but also impossible to stand in. So that is day 5 of Funguary Hairy Mycena. Day 6 is the Pixie Parasol. This mushroom has a really interesting distribution pattern. It's only found in Southeast Australia, New Zealand, and Chile. This is known as a Gondwanan distribution. From my research, I found out that Gondwana was an ancient supercontinent, kind of like Pangaea, and it broke up around 180 million years ago into South America and Australia. So there are other species, other plants, that have Gondwanan distributions, and it was really confusing for scientists at first to be like, why are these things that are, an entire ocean away, why do they only grow here? And it's because of the previous supercontinent. The cap of this mushroom is shiny and really gelatinous, so it looks delicious, but it's really not recommended to consume this fungus. Mycologists believe that it may contain currently unidentified toxins, so they haven't found anything that's specifically toxic, but it does contain properties that are unidentified as of right now, and they don't know if those are toxic to humans. Some mycologists also believe that Pixie Parasols contain psilocybin, the compound that gives mushrooms their psychedelic effects. This is because the mushroom has a blooming effect when it's damaged, which is common in mushrooms containing psilocybin or psilocin. However, no psilocybin or psilocin has been identified in biochemical studies, but it's possible that there are other compounds that cause the same effect that psilocybin does. So obviously the name Pixie Parasol definitely gives me a lot of imagery to work with. I originally started out with her sort of floating with the parasol, but I realized if I was going to put all of these girls on one plane or one image, that having her floating would be quite challenging to put with everybody else. This illustration is pretty similar to the elegant blue web cap that I did for day 1 of Funguary, where the actual mushroom itself is featured very prominently in the image. So if you'd like to check that out in the iCard, you can definitely go ahead and do that now. I really wanted this character to look kind of cute and flirty, and I thought this little ruffly romper was the cutest little outfit. I put a lot of emphasis and a lot of focus on really making that mushroom cap look super duper shiny, and you guys can let me know if I achieved the effect that I was looking for, but I'm pretty happy with it. So that is day 6, Pixie Parasol. Day 7, we have Podoserpula Pusio. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. I definitely hope so. This fungus primarily grows in New Zealand, Australia, Venezuela, and Madagascar. It's fittingly nicknamed the pagoda fungus because of its stacked tiers of fruiting structures that branch off from a single stalk. This fungus is weird and kind of unique. Outside of its family, there isn't a single other fungus with this morphology. It's one of only 2 species in its entire family, and to put that in perspective, there are 35 species in the Canidae family, including wolves, dogs, and coyotes. So to have an entire family with only 2 species is quite unusual. There are 4 separate variations of this fungus. None of these other versions of the fungus look like the Podoserpula Pusio, so it's a bit contentious as to why they're not the same species, but scientists say that their genomes are too similar to classify them as different species. That could potentially change in the future, but for now they're all classified under one species. The closest relatives of the Pusio are actually a crust-like fungus that grow horizontally on logs and branches, very unlike the towering stalk of the Podoserpula Pusio. It grows differently in its structure to reach above the forest floor and distribute its spores on the wind. So obviously for this character, I had to create some form of tiered fruiting bodies to mimic the shape of the Podoserpula Pusio. And I think that this frilly collar and the bottom of her dress definitely lean in that direction. I originally had a 3rd ruffle around her waist, but I thought it took away from her silhouette a little bit. I also absolutely love the colors on this fungus. They are so interesting, so unique, so bright. Honestly, they're absolutely gorgeous. It's one of the first fungi I've worked with that has these like really nice warm colors, which I really appreciated, and I think it gives this character a different energy than a lot of the other ones have. She seems very spicy, very interesting. I also really love her hair. I think her hair is super gorgeous. It took me a long time to blend out the colors here to make sure they have this nice smooth gradient while still keeping the texture of the mushroom underneath, which is sort of like this veined texture almost. It's kind of like bark on a tree. It's got this raised, bumpy texture. It was mostly hard to maintain on the bottom ruffle. So that is day 7, Podoserpula Pusio. Day 8 is the Werewere Kokako. These mushrooms are pretty much only found in New Zealand, and they're pretty important in sort of the local Maori culture. There's a Maori story, at least I believe it's a Maori story, and correct me if I'm wrong, that says that the Kokako bird nuzzled against this vibrant blue shroom, and that's how it got its blue wattle. The Kokako bird is a native bird to New Zealand, and it's also endangered, so, raising awareness for the Kokako bird. Obviously, this is also where the mushroom got its name from. These fungi grow singly or in pairs, but aren't found in large groups. One of the most distinguishing features of this fungus is its insanely bright blue color. We've had some bright blue mushrooms, but even amongst those, this one is crazy. No one knows why it has such a vibrant color. It could be used to attract or repel insects or birds, which would kind of make sense with the folklore of the Kokako rubbing against it, but there hasn't been any solid evidence to confirm this. People have also theorized about whether it has some trippy properties because of its color, but no psilocybin has been found. It also is not recommended to eat this mushroom and find out, as the toxicity is unknown. It is being currently investigated as a possible source of natural blue food dye, which I find very fascinating. The Werewere Kokako is also the only mushroom in the entire world to be featured on a banknote, the New Zealand $50 note. So originally, with this character, I was planning on making her Maori because I looked up a lot of the folklore about the Maori people, but when I looked up traditional Maori clothing to turn it into this outfit, I wasn't 100% sure if it was respectful or disrespectful to alter the clothing to make it appear more mushroom-like. I didn't know if it had significance that it would be inappropriate to alter. So, if you are Maori or you know somebody who's Maori, let me know in the comments down below. Maybe I'll do another character in a more Maori outfit. But yeah, I didn't want to be disrespectful. So instead I leaned into the werewere side of this name and I made her kind of a werewolf. I gave her glowing eyes, sharp fangs, and big fluffy ears. I thought that was sort of a cute little play on the name. Obviously, because of the mushroom's color, there isn't a ton of variation in it, so we leaned really heavily into this blue. I thought that an interesting way to get the silhouette of the mushroom was using this structured cape over the arms. I hadn't done that with any of the characters before, and I do think it sort of lends this top-heavy mushroom shape with a thinner, slimmer stalk. This mushroom also had a unique sort of texture. Like a lot of the other mushrooms, it starts out with this really gelatinous texture, and then it gets really matte. And I saw this one picture of the Werewere Kokako where it just had the most waxy looking texture. So I really wanted to capture that for the overcoat and leave the underneath looking a bit more like the stalk, like a regular mushroom. So that is day 8, Werewere Kokako. Day 9, we are not talking about a specific mushroom species, but a mushroom phenomenon. We are talking about fairy rings. So they're a natural mycological phenomenon where mushrooms grow out of the ground in the shape of a circle. This is caused by an underground fungus whose roots grow evenly in all directions. Then when it produces fruiting bodies, the mushrooms, they appear above ground in a ring. Some of these rings are small in size, but if the underground hyphae aren't removed, they can grow larger year after year. There is a 700-year-old fairy ring in France that's half a mile in diameter. How cool is that? Half a mile? That's crazy. Fairy rings also have a lot of folklore surrounding them. In English and Celtic folklore, they're caused by fairies or elves dancing in a circle. The mushrooms were a place for them to sit down and take a rest during their dances. But if a human joined the dance, they would be forced to dance until they passed out or died from exhaustion. In German folklore, these are called witches' rings, and they were believed to be a place where witches danced on Walpurgis Night. Austrian mythology has a different explanation. They blame dragons. It was said that they burned the fairy rings into the forest floor with their fiery tails. It was a bit of a challenge to try and represent a fairy ring as a person, and I'm not 100% satisfied with how this turned out. Yeah, I wish that I was able to incorporate the mushroom a little bit more into her actual design, but unfortunately, I couldn't think of any way to incorporate the actual ring aspect of the mushroom. I thought of like big chunky necklaces or maybe like a skirt with mushrooms around the base or something like that. And I bet those ideas would have worked. I just don't know if they would have translated very well. So I do have some regrets with this one. So instead I just tried to draw this very like elf woman, this very ethereal woman in this big flowy dress in this circle of mushrooms. She's also the only one that has any sort of background element. So yeah, and also I put a little stamp on her dress at the end and it's of flowers, and I really should have made it mushrooms, and I don't know why I didn't. So I don't know, I really blanked out on this one. You can yell at me in the comments about it. I feel really bad. I feel really bad. Okay, we can move on. So that's day 9, fairy ring. Day 10 brings us another mushroom that I'm gonna have trouble pronouncing, so bear with me. Day 10 is the Cortinarius Archeri. This fungus is also known as the Emperor Cortinar, and it's another species very commonly found in Australia. It's also one of the most common webcaps in southern Australia. If you remember my video on the elegant blue webcap, the webcap refers to a part of the mushroom called the cortina that is sort of thin and spider webby, that's why it's called a webcap, and it covers the spore-bearing parts of the mushroom to protect them until they're mature. These specimens are extremely common in eucalypt forests, and the mushroom forms a close bond with the roots of these trees. They sort of wrap around each other and the mushroom draws nutrients from them. These shrooms are mostly solitary, but they can be found growing in small groups. When this fungus is young, like many others, it has a very gelatinous cap, and as the fungus ages, the cap becomes dry and satiny, and that cortina will dissolve, leaving a distinct ring on the stem of the mushroom. This is often how it's identified as a species in the Cortinarius genus. The edibility of the Emperor Cortinar is unknown. Cortinarius is a genus with a number of extremely poisonous species, so these are not regarded as safe to eat, but I did see some accounts saying that it had sort of like a mild flavor, so clearly somebody's eaten it. The specific toxin in the Cortinarius genus that causes issues is called aurellanine. This toxin interferes with the protein synthesis in the kidneys, so that's a big issue. So don't eat shrooms you find in the wild. I had a really good time designing the outfit for this mushroom. I wanted to go a bit goth because it definitely gives off that like sort of purple goth vibe. And I immediately thought of these beautiful poofy Lolita style dresses, and that definitely gives her that sort of mushroom shape that we're looking for, that like rounded skirt. I just had so much fun with this, with doing the lace and everything. I don't think I've ever done an outfit this intricate, so I had a really good time. I actually found this dress, and this beautiful model, by the way, on a website where you can buy this dress, and I was like, ooh, I really want it. But yeah, it was really fun to design this dress. Again, I really wanted to lean into sort of the like darker elements. So she has a lot of this like dark purple, and I wanted to make her look also very, not very shiny. I wanted to make her look like that soft, velvety, mature texture that the adult mushroom turns into. I also think that the sort of 2 layers on the skirt allude to that web cap that the mushroom has when it's young. So I thought that was a pretty fun little detail. So yes, this is day 10, Cortinarius Archeri. Day 11 is another super cool fungus. This is called the Cobalt Crust fungus, also known as velvet blue spread or blue velvet on a stick, and this is due to its soft, pleasant texture. This fungus is a corticoid fungus, meaning that they adhere to the surfaces of substrate, like logs and sticks. They're also referred to as a resupinate fungus, meaning that the fruiting body, the part that's above ground, is against the surface of the substrate instead of fruiting from an independent stalk. This crust fungus is found in many Central and Southern European countries, parts of Asia, New Zealand, and North America. The fungus is also extremely thin, generally measuring in at less than 1 millimeter in thickness. Cobalt crust is also very hardy. It's able to dry out and then rehydrate and become more active. This allows them to survive a variety of seasonal changes. When the fungi is moist, it has a soft, waxy feel, and when it's dry, it's a lot tougher and more crumbly. Cobalt crust has no taste and a really poor texture for food. It's like really waxy and chewy, so it's considered inedible and it lacks any culinary value. When I saw this fungus, the immediate thought that I had was to do somebody with vitiligo and have this fungus sort of like growing on their body. I thought that was such a cool idea. I loved it. I love how it turned out. I think she's really interesting looking. I love the patches of the vitiligo on her skin, and it's so vibrant against the dark skin as well. And I figured I'd go with a darker skinned character because of how bright the fungus looked against the wood. So she has sort of, again, a skin tone color picked from the images. She's also the only character that does not have line art in her hair, and I don't know if I regret this decision or not. I really wanted to give her like a soft, curly looking afro, but obviously doing an afro with line work is a lot of effort. So I found these really beautiful afro texture brushes, and I tried them out, and I really like it, but it does look a little odd to me that she's the only character without line art in her hair. I noticed with the appearance of this fungus that it gets really dark at the center and then has this sort of white edge around it, which I thought would look very interesting and make it stand out even further against her skin. I also was very interested in creating texture, so I used a like watercolor brush in Procreate to get this texture, this variation, to make sure I still had the velvet texture that this fungus is known for. I also think her outfit is very cute. I love these asymmetrical shorts, and that bright blue underneath it is almost searing. I'm not sure if you'd actually be able to get clothes that are that color, but I think it's gorgeous. I think it goes very well with her skin tone. I'm really happy with how she turned out. I think she's lovely. I think she's one of my favorites. So that was Funguary Part 2, days 5 through 11. I will be continuing with Funguary. You can keep up to date on my social medias. I am Afterplague on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitch, and I am after_plague on Twitter. I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you again so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe for more videos in the future, and I hope you survive this post-plague world.